Welcome to Why Is This Good, a podcast by the Naples Writers Workshop. I'm Christine and I'm here with John. Hey, John.
Hello.
All right, it's my turn. I chose a story that was actually submitted to us by a listener. It is called A Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin. 58 College, Alameda. Old Oakland ladies all go to the Hinks department store in Berkeley. Old Berkeley ladies go to Capwell's department store in Oakland. Everyone on this bus is young and black or old and white, including the drivers. The old white drivers are mean and nervous, especially around Oakland Tech High School. They're always jolting the bus to a stop, hollering about smoking and radios. They lurch and stop with a bang, knocking the old white ladies into posts. The old ladies' arms bruise instantly. The young black drivers go fast, sailing through yellow lights at Pleasant Valley Road. Their buses are loud and smoky, but they don't lurch. Mrs. Burke's house today. Have to quit her, too. Nothing ever changes. Nothing is ever dirty. I can't understand why I'm there at all. Today I felt better. At least I understood about the 30 Lancers Rosé wine bottles. There were 31. Apparently yesterday was their anniversary. There were 2 cigarette butts in his ashtray, not just one. One wine glass, she doesn't drink, and my new rosé bottle. The bowling trophies had been moved slightly. Our life together. She taught me a lot about housekeeping. Put the toilet paper in so it comes out from under. Only open the Comet tab to 3 holes instead of 6. Waste not, want not. Once in a fit of rebellion, I ripped the tab completely off and accidentally spilled Comet all down the inside of the stove. A mess. Cleaning women. Let them know you are thorough. The first day, put all the furniture back wrong, 5 to 10 inches off, or facing the wrong way. When you dust, reverse the Siamese cats. Put the creamer to the left of the sugar. Change the toothbrushes all around. My masterpiece in this area was when I cleaned the top of Mrs. Burke's refrigerator. She sees everything, but if I hadn't left the flashlight on, she would have missed the fact that I scoured and reoiled the waffle iron, mended the geisha girl, and washed the flashlight as well. Doing everything wrong not only reassures them you are thorough, it gives them a chance to be assertive and a boss. Most American women are very uncomfortable about having servants. They don't know what to do while you're there. Mrs. Burke does things like recheck her Christmas card list and iron last year's wrapping paper in August. Try to work for Jews or blacks. You get lunch, but mostly Jewish and black women respect work. The work you do, and also they are not at all ashamed of spending the entire day doing absolutely nothing. They're paying you, right? The Christian Easter stars are another story, so they won't feel guilty always trying to be doing something they never would do. Stand on the stove to clean an exploded Coca-Cola off the ceiling. Shut yourself inside the glass shower. Shove all the furniture, including the piano, against the door. They would never do that. Besides, they can't get in. Thank God they always have at least one TV show that they are addicted to. I flip the vacuum on for half an hour, a soothing sound. Lie down under the piano with an endust rag clutched in my hand just in case. I just lie there and hum and think. I refuse to identify your body tear, which caused a lot of hassle. I was afraid I would hit you for what you did. Died. Burke's piano is what I do last before I leave. Bad part about that is the only music on is the Marine hymn. I always end up marching to the bus stop from the halls of Montezuma. All right.
You're not going to sing that?
No, and when I looked at that yesterday, I was like, well, no, not even gonna try. So, like I said, this was recommended to us. I didn't know anything about it. Had you read it?
No, I never encountered it before.
Yeah, I really liked it. I'm trying to remember if I had like a takeaway. I don't think this is it. But obviously, like one of the cool things about this is the structure. So, as a cleaning lady, she has tons of clients and she remembers them by address. And so, sections like the one I read start with like a number and a street, presumably, or like a
I think
number
that's
in
the
an
bus route.
area.
Isn't it the bus
Whatever it
route?
is, yeah, yeah. I think in this case, it just like allows you as a writer. This is like a manual for cleaning women. So maybe we talk about like how it's a manual and that's the structure. Although we've read stories that are more closely structured that way, like a recipe or like directions or whatever. And this is like you said, like maybe it's like the bus route and maybe it's the address. But either way, I think it kind of lets a writer jump around. You don't have to tell a story like in sort of this like start to finish type thing. She's just kind of taking you about her week or about her day. She can show you one client and then jump to the next without much in the way of transitions, which I think for me at least are what make it hard for me to do longer pieces. I might have like ideas for beats in a story, but I don't always know how to get a character from A to B to C to D, you know? And so a structure like this is just kind of like gives you permission to do the jumping. So I enjoyed it that way.
What I noticed about this structure was that, like you said, it starts with like the bus route, or what I think is the bus route. And so every section has like these spots that are available to her, to the author, to fill. And
Yeah.
the first spot is the bus route. You can talk about the bus, things that are happening on the bus, the discussion amongst the cleaning ladies, what happens, the bus driver that takes that weird detour down the side street and stuff like that. And then there's also a section for her cleaning stuff. Like I get off the bus, I go to this person's house and I do these things and I interact with that person. So you get some
Right.
stuff about that. There are those little inserts that are in parentheses that are like, it's called a manual for cleaning women. So there's these little like, cleaning women, this is what you should do. And then at the end of some of them, most of them, is a little reflection on her deceased husband, Terry. A little moment of, oh, my husband died. Oh, this is the thing that happened between us. This is my little thought. And then the very end is obviously her last, the second to last of these ends with, Terry, I don't want to die after all. Or, Terry, I don't want to die at all, actually. And that's like a culmination. And then the very, very last one ends with, I weep, which is, you can come to understand that that's a reaction to everything that's happened. Or I finally weep, sorry. But I just like that. And she doesn't fill each of those slots in every go
Yeah.
round. Sometimes there's less about Terry. Sometimes there's more about Terry. Sometimes there's a larger scene of her, like when she's digging through the carpet trying to find
Yeah.
the puzzle piece. And sometimes there's more scene on the bus. It varies, but it's the same kind of structure each time into which she can insert what is necessary for, or what she wants to do in that section. It's really interesting. I don't know if she did that consciously or if it just worked out that way, or if halfway through she realized she was doing that and went with it, or however it came about. It offers up so many possibilities for like what we could do. Like if we wanted to like steal that and say like, I want to do something like that in a
Right.
story, like you were saying, like you just take that and like you can start filling it in. Like if you don't know how to get from here to here, you just start slotting things into a structure like that.
Yeah, I think slotting is a good term for it. Where like you said, you have ideas for these things you know you want to hit, but the structure is loose enough that you don't have to hit on Terry each time. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But there's also an opportunity in each of these little, they're almost vignettes of each of these clients.
Almost, yeah. It's a mixture. It's interesting. The tense and point of view, those little like manual sections are obviously in that kind of manual style, like imperative,
Yeah.
what we talked about in so many ways. There's moments when it's in past tense and present tense, a little slippery. I didn't analyze to see if there was rhyme or reason to that, but it just feels like we're just going to dump it, not dump in, but slot in
Yeah.
what is necessary for each of these spots.
I think too, it's like, it's sort of a freeing structure in that you don't necessarily have to promise your reader that this is going to end in a certain way. This doesn't have to necessarily like build plot wise.
Yeah.
Each of these visit doesn't culminate in something. It doesn't further like a progression of events for this main character. So the reader doesn't have these expectations.
Yeah, I read it as like it's an exploration of feelings. It's
Yeah.
grief and economic insecurity. Like she lost her husband and now she has to do this job. Like that section where she's like looking at that's where I used to live. And it's like right in the
Yeah.
neighborhood with the person I'm cleaning their house with. So she's obviously had an economic downgrade after her
Yeah.
husband died.
And then she's like learning all of these things about class and like the
Yes.
section I read, like the types of people and families that are better or worse to work for based on their experience in the world and like their lot in life and how they feel about hiring help and how they feel about the help they must be hiring, right? They make assumptions about her.
Yes.
So a lot of the manual tips for the cleaning women are how to make sure that these people who already have assumptions about who you must be, like you must steal from me,
Oh yeah, those
and you
were
must be
great.
lazy. Yeah, she's always like, when I see like these little dishes of change put out, knowing that they're traps, instead of taking money, I add money to them. And she's like, I don't steal your money, I steal your pain pills, and I don't steal your money like I steal your spices because I know you don't use them.
Because you have 31 bottles of that one.
Yeah, it's like she's not trying to steal from you to like spite you or to even like get ahead. She's just kind of like, you don't need this and you don't use it. And I know that and I could use it.
I was trying to find there's a moment where the one new client opens the door and sees her, and it's like just says like,
I think that's the last section with the puzzle piece. She's like, oh, and she's like, am I early? She's like, no.
"Oh, holy Moses!" The first thing
Yeah.
she said to me when she opened the door was, "Holy Moses!"
Yeah. She's just like a character.
Well, that person is, but it's like it feels like it's because she had that economic, like because she's
Yeah.
not at their level anymore. She's down here. That there's some recognition of that.
Yeah, before I comment on that section, because I do want to talk about that one, I think what a structure like this does is it's the kind of story storytelling that like lets the author, like the writer, kind of sneak up on the reader. Like once you realize that this is a structure and we're going to be jumping around and it's not promising anything in terms of like where we're going, you're just kind of like along for the ride because the writer is good enough, the anecdotes are interesting enough, the vignettes feel true and the details are cool, and it's kind of like, okay, who's the next person? Oh, that's kind of funny. You don't steal, you give them money back, whatever it is. And then like it lets it sneak up on you in terms of the emotional impact of this final client. By the end, we know that there's been something like transformational, like you said, about either everything that this woman's gone through up until this point, or something about this client in particular. Obviously, like it's about grief and like her stead in life and how it's all changed. But even that, we're not sure how it's going to resolve. We don't, it's just like you said, like an exploration at this point. But I think, like, if anything, like the change of heart that this main character has is that she doesn't think she wants to get through this. She doesn't think that it's worth being around without her husband, not just because her life has changed dramatically, but because she misses him that much. And then by the end, I think what's unique is that she meets this other widow who she
Yeah.
watches do like a puzzle. And there's a moment where she looks at her doing the puzzle and she's like, you could tell she was like beautiful in her day. She's like sitting there doing a puzzle, just not thinking about herself. But even then, she's like striking a pose, right? And this cleaning woman is looking at her and she can see like the vestiges of what was probably a glamorous and exciting life that is in the rear view. And she's still this like larger than life sort of character. And then the two of them can hunt for this missing puzzle piece together and feel excited about it, right? Like there's still like moments of joy to be had in a life that feels meaningless. And I think like the cleaning lady by the end is kind of Maria, I think is her name. She's kind of saying, I don't want to die anymore, you know? Like there are things to like hold out for. Maybe this job sucks, but there's like these glimmers that make her realize that there's still good out there worth sticking
Yeah.
around for.
She made a connection with someone that she recognizes is similar to her, or in a kind of precarious situation that she has been in, her husband having died, etc.
Yes. So she finds that puzzle piece with that woman and she says, Tara, I don't want to die, actually. And then the last paragraph, the last bus stop is outside the laundry. And she's talking about like how everyone in the laundromat is standing around drinking pop. And the Ohio State band is playing the national anthem on TV and it says snow flurries in Michigan. And then the last paragraph here, it is a cold, clear January day. Four sideburn cyclists turn up at the corner at 29th like a kite string. A Harley idles at the bus stop and some kids wave at the rasty rider from the bed of a 50 Dodge pickup truck. I finally weep. And there's nothing necessarily about those details that are supposed to strike us in terms of like their significance for like connecting to her grief, except that like she's like witnessing things and like seeing people and everything is still going on, you know?
World continues on.
Yeah, and she's present.
She's like, I'm in this world. I am part of it.
Yeah, it's cold. It's a clear January day, and I'm seeing these other people do these things, and yeah, I'm still here, type thing.
She's alive, right? And she wants to
Yeah.
be that way.
Yeah, and she's like weeping because it's like, I don't know. It's not everything she wants, but it's pretty good. Whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know. This is, I think, like I said, this type of structure lets a moment like that totally surprise you. Because
Yeah.
here we've been set up, we've been primed over the course of how many pages to expect another detail about a client. And instead, like, we're getting like a slice of life that impacts her.
So grief is like something that doesn't change. Like if you start grieving, somebody dies and you're grieving them, you're going to be grieving for your entire life.
Right.
Your sibling dies when you're 20. By the time you're 50, you're going to turn around to tell them something every
Right.
now and then, and you're going to miss them again.
Right.
And it'll be forever. So this kind of structure helps, is interesting for that because it's like an eternal thing. It's not a movement thing where we can see time passing. It's
Right.
just we're always in. It's like, okay, here's another one. Here's another one. It's indistinct, right?
Yeah.
We're not sure exactly when these things happen. But what we do get in the movement we do get is a emotional movement. So at the
Right.
end, the nature of her grief has changed.
Right.
Like she has come to accept it is a weird way to say it, but she's come to terms with it in a certain way. Like she's no longer stagnant.
Yeah, that it's going to be part of all of this.
Yeah.
It's not something to like move through or past.
Yeah, so when she's standing there in a lively scene where things are happening around her, it hits her. Like she
Right.
can weep now because she's part of life still, even though she's still grieving. Something like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other stories that we've read like this that like kind of jump around.
The thing I just said about grief, I
Yeah.
said before in some episode, and I don't remember which story it was for, but there's something about structuring stories around the shape of an emotion. Like if the emotion your character is in has a certain shape, then the structure of the story might reflect that shape. And this kind of like non-moving, like non-progressing kind of shape is interesting for that, for emotions that don't progress in a certain way. I'm trying to think of an emotion that does progress progress. Like if you're angry, you usually get over the anger, right? Anger can either
Yeah.
build up to something or it dies away, or you have to work at maintaining it, right? To continually remind yourself why you're angry.
Yeah. Every other emotion I'm like thinking of comes with like some kind of like a direct plot, right? Like we're not visiting this character at a time when she's about to lose her husband or she just lost her husband, right? So the
Yeah.
plot of the story is not his death. It's just like what's happening to her in the moments after. And like you said, it's kind of this like standstill emotionally. Like this is just like the new reality that's she's found herself in and she doesn't even know what she's working towards. So of course there's no like forward momentum. She's not even
Yeah.
like talking about the grief as something to be like contended with. She's just kind of like, this is it. This is how I'm making ends meet and it fucking sucks. She's not like, well, I just got to get back on my feet. You know what I mean? There's not like a plan that she's got for herself.
Be interesting to think of anticipatory grief because that's like that kind of thing where, like a deathbed, you're waiting
Yeah,
for someone to pass away.
right.
And it could take weeks, it could take months, whatever the time scale is, but it has an end point where what you're feeling is going to change.
Yes.
So what does that structure look like? It could be similar because it doesn't change a lot while it's happening, but then there's that sharp break at the end of it.
Yeah, it's like the end of one thing, which means that there's a start of another one.
Yeah.
And this is just like, that's already happened. It's already over. And now this is it. This is the new reality. But she
Yeah.
doesn't see how that feeling changes next.
Yeah.
This is just what she's like left with.
I guess an obvious emotion, like a love story, that has a movement to it. There's
Right.
before you meet the person, there's falling in love. Depending on how far you go with it, there's disillusion. It could go a long ways.
I think whether or not like you end up writing a story about grief or like even like necessarily if you would consider your story one of about an emotion, like you said, like certain emotions like maybe dictate the shape or the structure or like push you toward a direction like that. Either way, like this structure of like freeing the writer to kind of jump around and then allowing something to kind of sneak up on the reader. I think that's a good structure if you have a loose idea for something that you want to explore.
Oh, yeah.
And this seems like the kind of story where, like you said, maybe she was slotting in this element and this element and this element in each of these scenes, and maybe she was or wasn't really conscious of doing that as the writer as it was
Yeah.
happening. You don't have to be conscious of it, but you can play around with it. And I imagine this is the kind of story structure that once you're doing it and you're playing around with it, like even you end up being surprised by what it is you come up with because there's something like freeing about not having to make a character progress in any kind of way. It's just like an exploration, but the structure of jumping around offers you a structure because
Yeah.
otherwise what would be happening? I like these kinds of structures too because I'm not someone that like deals with plot. Like I have such like a hard time coming up with like things that are going to happen or things that characters are going to do and like climactic moments even like just don't like occur to me. But there are still stories without strong plots that are like pack like this emotional punch that I
Yeah.
think sometimes people think only comes from a buildup of plot. And that's not true. Like things can come out of nowhere too and be as like powerful in experience.
One of the things to say about the way that she structured this is, like I said, there's always a section. It's like it starts with the bus, literally has the bus number, route information as like the
Yeah.
heading, and then so there's a little thing about like either she's interacting with her fellow passengers, the fellow cleaning ladies on their way to their various jobs, or story about the bus driver doing something, what the bus is doing, or the scene around the woman sweeping. So that's like her compatriots. That's like her new kind of, I don't know, friend group is a weird way to say it, but like her new social milieu, right?
Yeah.
And then the other section is her various clients, like her being in the house, interacting with these other people, like the woman who can't forgets to sign checks and won't give her car fare, and then the finding the puzzle piece and this kind of stuff. And that section is guided by her interaction with her old life. So her new life in the first section, her how she is able to glimpse her old life in the second section by
Yeah.
interacting with these clients. So that, I don't know if she did this consciously, but by falling into that, by discovering that structure, you're giving us a perspective on both new and old by putting those things together. So that if you find those, like you're saying, find those little moments from each of those things, you can just slot them in where the emotional progression or the emotional lead up for that moment at the end makes sense. I think if you're thinking about doing a structure like this, thinking about where those vignettes come from,
Yeah.
what the interaction is that creates the emotions you're exploring, then you can structure it like that so that you're highlighting those kinds of things that are important for the story.
Yeah.
It sounds very vague and generalized, but there's a better way for me to say that.
I don't know. It sounds kind of like what we talk about when then you talk about ways to like shoehorn a flashback and how sometimes like the ways to do that are to like interact with like your surrounding, like your character looks at something that reminds them of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is that the character's needs, like what is happening to the character, what the story is about. Like, if I'm right and this story is about grief and social instability or economic instability, the economic instability entails two economic levels. So it has to portray both of those levels. So, given that the story is going to have to portray those two levels, you find vignettes from this level and you find vignettes from that level, and then you can layer them into your structure. So, whatever your story happens to be about, you figure out what it needs to portray, and then you can slot those into your structure.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I like too how each mention and though of her husband, of Terry, it might be slotted and it might be intentional, but it almost always is like surprising and breaks up what's happening.
Yeah, it's the punch at the end of each section, right?
Yeah.
It's like the thing that happens.
So, this is not the section I read, but the section right before it. It's like she's describing some of the shops along her route to this whatever next stop, and then it starts with Tara refused to ride buses. The people
Oh, I wanted
depressed
to talk
him.
about this section. Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes into like this little, yeah, I like this paragraph. It says, Terry refused to ride buses. The people depressed him sitting there. He liked Greyhound stations, though. We used to go to the ones in San Francisco and Oakland, mostly Oakland, on San Pablo Avenue. Once he told me he loved me because I was like San Pablo Avenue. I thought that was great.
That's good.
And then she says, he was like the Berkeley dump. I wish there was a bus to the dump. We went there when we got homesick for New Mexico. It is stark and windy and gulls soar like night hawks in the desert. You can see the sky all around you and above you. Garbage trucks thunder through dust billowing roads, gray dinosaurs. I can't handle you being dead, Tare, but you know that.
This is what I wanted to talk about. This is such an interesting moment. The big paragraph you read where it says it's stark and windy, gulls soar. You can see the sky. That's like a just universal you. Like
Yeah,
anyone who's
yeah.
standing there can see this. But then the next line, she's directly addressing Tara in her thoughts. I can't handle you being dead, Tara, but you know that. It's like the time at the airport when you were about to get on the cutter. So now she's thinking about Tara and she's addressing him. But then he's answering in her memory, in quotes, talking to her. So in the quotes, oh shit, I can't go. You'll never find the car. He's addressing her as you. And it's like this
Yeah.
back and forth. What you gonna do when I'm gone, Maggie? You kept asking over and over the other time when you were going to London. So now she's talking to him again, but she's like remembering what he's saying. I'll do macrame, punk. What you gonna do when I'm gone, Maggie? You really think I need you that bad? Yes, you said. Simple note. It's like super easy to read, but I thought it was just fascinating how they use they're stacking up in that
Yeah,
section.
yeah, you. And I think that might be the only one where we have dialogue with Terry.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest, like, I'm talking about the slots. That's the biggest Terry slot in the whole thing. Most of them are just
Yeah,
like one line at the end of the paragraph, a paragraph. It's very brief mentions. We get, like, her mind goes back to Terry for just those moments.
right,
And then we cut immediately away. It's like, oh, I don't want to think about Terry too much because I'm grieving. But then we cut
right.
to the next bus line.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else to kind of like point out about it. I think I'll just go back to that structure. I think this is a good writing experiment too. Like if you're looking for a prompt, it can be the result of a occupation like this where maybe you are the bus driver that makes all these stops, or like I do my Meals on Wheels route. I could easily write a Meals on Wheels story where it's like,
Oh, just vignettes.
yeah, you're stopping at these 15 places. Some of these
Every
people make
door
you
you
think
knock at.
things. Yeah, exactly. All these strangers you're encountering. It could be like, I don't know, someone that doesn't move but gets like a bunch of people coming into their shop on a regular basis. And what each of those interactions is like. There's something about like the jumping around though that lets you focus on the exciting, important details, gloss over the boring stuff, gives you permission to kind of like not stay in a place with the character if you don't know what should happen next. Well, stop, go to the next one. Which is probably like good advice overall. I think sometimes like people want to tell you a story and they're like, well, I got to start at the beginning and I got to get through the boring parts. It's like, oh, please don't. Skip ahead. Yeah, this is a fun structure that way. And then whether you want to like layer on an emotion like grief or just like an exploration that the character's having about something else that they want to talk about, like something that's occupying their mind, it's like a good way to slip it in there.
That's kind of my takeaway isn't necessarily limited to the structure, but just that idea of like whatever your story, whatever you want your story to be about,
Yeah.
figuring out how to present the character interacting with that idea.
Yeah.
So if it's grief, it's like figuring out what those moments of the development of the grief or non-development of the grief. Or
Yeah.
if it's about economic instability, it's figuring out how to portray the instability. Like if there's two levels like we're talking about here, or whatever it is. is. Like finding out in whatever way, if it's a planning thing or if it's a write and figure it out as you go thing, trying to keep that in mind as you're writing. Like, what is my story actually about? Is it just about this character?
Yeah, I'm glad we had another good listener submission.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Thanks, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, consider joining our Patreon. Your support helps us keep the show running. Find out more at patreon.com/whyisthisgoodpodcast. And for industry news, writing tips, and great short fiction, join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Naples Writers Workshop. You can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter at napleswritersworkshop.com.